Welcome back to Tri-City Sports Now, the second hour here. I want to thank Caleb Calhoun for joining us here. Also, want to tell you that on Monday, we will be broadcasting the now eagerly anticipated games between Unicoi County and Hampton on the hardwood. And why are these basketball games eagerly anticipated? Well, Haley Padgett, I'm holding this up on our Facebook page right here, who is the leading scorer for Unicoi County, is now the talk of all of women's basketball, female basketball, what have you here, in the Tri-Cities. Big front page of the sports section feature story on Haley Padgett, talking about the Lady Blue Devils are 4-1 in the Three Rivers Conference, 11-6 overall. 4-1, I believe, is a half. Let's see here. It's one back in the loss column of first place Sullivan South, if memory serves. She's averaging 19 points a game and 5'11" senior, but really looking maybe to just be a college student at ETSU and not necessarily try to walk on or play for Brittany Azell. Of course, years gone by, Amy Engel was a star from Unicoi County, who then later starred for, was it Karen Kemp or Debbie Richardson that Amy Engel played for? I think it was Karen Kemp back in the 90s. It was Kemp now that I think about it. So it was Karen Kemp that was the coach for Amy Engel. And she was, like I said, an outstanding player. But anyway, you'll have a chance to listen to Haley Padgett Monday, 6:30 at Hampton right here on 1420 NBC Sports Radio Tri-Cities, followed by the first place boys, 4-0 in the conference, as they will take on Hampton, who isn't a member of the Three Rivers Conference, but still, something of always a strong athletic program. And hey, you want to go back there? I mean, the legend of Hampton basketball winning the state title in 1960 while wearing Vanderbilt's uniforms under Buck Van Hust. Now, these games will be brought to you by Health and Home Care, Jones and Church Farms, Unicoi County Insurance Agency, Unicoi Gas Utility District, and they'll be getting, anyone with gas heat's going to be getting some, they're going to be turning on the furnace again, I believe, on Sunday. Farm Bureau Insurance, which is a proud sponsor of Blue Devils basketball. Irwin Paint and Body Shop, Clinchfield Federal Credit Union, The Computer Guy, Relay for Life of Unicoi County, Dr. Jason Cunningham, Irwin Utilities, Irwin Bonding, Unicoi County Memorial Hospital, Urgent Care of Irwin, Irwin Pets, and the Irwin Kentucky Fried Chicken, giving away $25 gift certificates to Unicoi County fans who listen in and like the 1420 NBC Sports Radio Tri-Cities Facebook page. What do you think about that? So there you have it. I began the show talking a little bit about just the decline in NFL ratings and the rise in college ratings. And just to reiterate, I spoke of how you cannot ignore that the college football semifinals last season were on New Year's Eve, and this year they were on New Year's Day. And that's like the difference between putting something on Saturday night and Sunday night. Sunday night is the most watched night in TV. Prime time begins at 7 because of that. It's the only day that it does. But you then have a circumstance on Saturday, that's where, they throw whatever they can, on there. And I know somebody's going to point out some great Saturday, I grew up watching the Love Boat on Saturday night or whatever. Saturday Night Live has been on the air since 1975. I mean, I know you'll get that sort of stuff, but as it, on average, Saturday night is the least watched night on TV because people, they go out and they all stay in on Sunday night. They're getting ready for work the next day. I mean, that's not, that's easy to figure out. And so that's the same thing, New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. Come on, that's the same exact thing. I have mentioned that I think that for safety reasons, for popularity of football, for a lot of things, they've got to adopt the timing rules in college football of the NFL. In fact, I'd get rid of overtime altogether. You know that how I feel about that. I think it rewards gutlessness. I was thinking even just, Georgia in the national championship game, I was reminded of years ago when Dan Marino beat Georgia in the Sugar Bowl with less than a minute left. Pitt had a 4th and 5. They could have gone out and kicked a 50-yard field goal to tie the game. That would have been it. That would have ended in a tie. Nobody loses. You come out, you would have had the feeling of winning the tie because you scored late, that sort of thing. And Marino said, to heck with that. Let's go for it. 4th and 5, he throws a 33-yard touchdown pass to John Brown. That was a tight end. He recently passed away. And Pitt wins the ball game. They beat Herschel Walker, who, I don't know, let's see here. No, Georgia had lost to Clemson that year. But other than that, I guess Georgia had won every other game they had played in the 1980s. They won 3 straight SEC titles. So they only lost, I think, for 3 years, 3 games. First 3 years of the 80s. And that was the second one. And Marino beat him. And it was going for broke. Now, there was no overtime then. If you had overtime today, what do? Oh, well, this is easy. Go out and kick the field goal, and then we'll try to win this in overtime. No guts! No guts! No guts! It's difficult to make those arguments that the players of today, they're bigger and stronger. So you say, well, they were better than those in days gone by or something. But you had guts! And so if you are the old timer, if you want to cling to the past, if you want to do, there is something of a legitimate argument when you can make that they've got to make the gutsy call then and back it up. And nowadays, you could make that call, sure. But really, how many times do you, when everything is equal, go for 2 in that situation? When you score the touchdown on the last play of the game and you're down by a point. I happen to think you're better off doing it. So did Georgia Tech, although it didn't work out for them when they went for 2, in overtime this past year against Tennessee. Didn't work out for them, but at least, and it may have cost them a bowl game ultimately because Georgia Tech went 5 and 6 instead of 6 and 5. Then again, they kicked the extra point. Who's to say they win in overtime anyway? Guts. I like gut. And I never heard anybody criticize the decision Georgia Tech made. I never heard that. Heard a lot of people, criticizing Butch Jones for just automatically, no guts, kicking the extra point. Hey, can this guy count to 14? What's up with this? And, I think that you've got no guts there and all that. Even 2016, I've mentioned this, if you had no overtime, Tennessee may actually beat Texas A&M. Because there's no way you're going for 2, again, no guts, when you score the tying touchdown with 1.5 minutes. You give the opponent 3 downs to beat you. Or when it's a tie game. Because they're not... A guy throws 3 incomplete passes in a first drive. They're punting away. They're not going for it on 4th and 10. So you might as well play for the overtime. Even if you were successful in making that 2-point conversion to go up by a point, you got to stop the other team for 4 downs, not 3. At least until you get into field goal range. Now, had Tennessee gone for 2 in that game, and play calls being similar, then the missed field goal by A&M at the end of regulation, guess what? Tennessee wins by a point. But it's not a wise move to give the other team 4 downs. You don't have overtime. You do have to scratch your chin and say, well, do we want to not lose or do we want to win? Well, they said overtime just rewards gutlessness. And I can tell you that sometimes I've seen gutless coaches I'm real critical of actually Phil Fulmer. 93 when Tennessee and Alabama tied. And Alabama scores the winning touchdown, or winning. Yeah, they beat, what was the score that day? I want to say it was 22-22, but it was a tie game. But it was one of those ties where you lose if you're Tennessee, that sort of thing. And I want to say the score was 22-22. So it's like that, Harvard beats Yale 26-26. Alabama won that game for all intents and purposes when Palmer ran around the end. But what really bothered me was you've got Heath Schuler, you've got a minute left, and all Fulmer did in the last minute was stuff the ball into the line. Go for the victory. He was afraid, you had Heath Schuler for crying out loud. Really that afraid that Schuler's going to throw a pick six and you lose? Go for the win. You had a minute. You've got these archaic timing rules. We'll stop the clock for the first down. You can come back. That's enough time when you got a future top 3 pick throwing a ball. All right. Enough of the history lesson. I did want to point out here, you do have these people talking about the ratings, and some people are trying to say, well, the college game is better than the pro game. And I kind of reiterated on this a little bit, too, at the start of the show. Why would you ever say that? I think that it's just that we're in college football territory around here. So we like watching our teams, be it Tennessee, Virginia Tech, North Carolina, NC State, ETSU, whoever, Tusculum. I think that's why it. But you look at the pros, you've got better players, faster pacing, bigger stars, better branding. And here's what I mean about better branding. Here, 1420 NBC Sports Radio Tri-Cities, we broadcast the Dallas Cowboys. Why? It's not just that Jason Witten is from the next town over, but there's always been a lot of Dallas Cowboys fans around here. Go anywhere, you'll find Dallas Cowboys fans. They have an appeal in rural America. I personally think some of that is branding. They would always get, it seemed like they were winning back in the 70s, so they always be the 4 o'clock game because of where they played. They'd have the primetime game, the extra one on Thanksgiving. They were easy to follow if you lived in Maine or Montana or wherever. However, I think that also, back in the day, Monday Night Football, I think that Don Meredith's supposed Heartland appeal did reiterate with the Heartland. And Meredith is the former Cowboys quarterback. I also think, quite frankly, that one of the reasons why the Steelers have a national following is that Terry Bradshaw now has that same Heartland following. But anyway, go anywhere in the country, you'll find Cowboys fans, right? Now, who's America's team of college football? There really isn't one. So a lot of people will say Notre Dame, after all of their home games are going to be on NBC, but, around here, they're going to half the time they preempt it for the SEC game of the day by Jefferson Pilot. They still have that. That's what they used to do. I need to switch over to the Notre Dame game. It'd already be in the second quarter. You don't see that many Notre Dame fans around in East Tennessee, or really in the South. And if you do find one, 2-to-1, they're a transplant from the Midwest or the Northeast. But in the South and the West, I really don't think, in Texas, and this is supposed to be America's team. Well, it doesn't have the same branding. And you can go even look at, one of the things I've looked at is Facebook. And Notre Dame has, I believe, fewer than 1 million Facebook followers, whereas the Steelers have more than 6 million, and the Cowboys have about 8 million. So you tell me, those are guys all over the country. Wherever you go, you'll find a fan of a glamorous NFL team. Anyway, and so I mentioned this due to the fact that I say, people talking about, well, the ratings are up because people prefer the college game and such. Not necessarily. I think that you've got the circumstance where games were played in the playoffs on New Year's. Now, in comparison to the pro games, why they would be down a little bit, don't forget about this. And I do think, the fact that it seems like you've got two political entities, both from the left and right, attacking the NFL. But let's look at the games last week. There's talk that the Titans-Chiefs was the least watched playoff game in 5 years. Well, it's the Titans and the Chiefs. Exciting game. great comeback for the Titans. By the way, DeMarco Murray will not play against the Patriots. I should mention that. DeMarco Murray out for the Patriots now. It's official. I don't think they're going to miss him with the way Derrick Henry's been running. Still, and he's fresh, too. That's another thing. Still, don't forget this. You've got a circumstance where, these aren't glamour teams, Chiefs and Titans. That isn't going to be that big of a rating. Talk about how the 4 p.m. Sunday playoff game, 21% decrease with Saints and Panthers from the year before. Well, now, I love Drew Brees, and I think he's a big star, but the Saints and the Panthers just are not the glamour teams that the Giants and the Packers are. And for that matter, a lot of people talking about, well, the ratings were down for L.A. versus Atlanta. The L.A. Rams are an interesting team because I don't think that they will ever, or at least not for until several years into the future, I do not think the Rams will really be getting that big market glamour behind them, even in LA. Even though they've got, I think, Jared Goff will be a coming star. Todd Gurley already is. But the reason why is that when you look at where the Rams franchise is, they've always scorned their fan base. They've moved from every town they've ever been in. St. Louis, way, way, way back in the day, Cleveland, but that's not worth talking about. And contemporarily, LA. And, the idea that you come back after 21 years, the man who was young, who is now middle-aged, or the middle-aged man who now is old, will suddenly start to embrace this team that once scorned him. You're just not going to have that same passion in Los Angeles that you will in Pittsburgh, in Chicago, in San Francisco, in New York with the Giants, in Philly with the... You're just not going to have that. And that's one of the things that you've got to consider with relocation. The NFL is turning its back on 3 viable markets for 2 that really aren't going to care much about it. They want to get rid of another viable market for London, which will probably be because of London and the international feel and the size of London and the importance of expanding football internationally and all that. I understand why you want to do it. But don't think that if you take away a market, even if it's Jacksonville, that there won't be repercussions. We're seeing there are repercussions now with the moves that are going on. You're going to places that, frankly, people are going to be indifferent. I continue to say, the Oakland Raiders brand, that has, even after 15 losing seasons in 16 years, that has worth. That has glamour. Oakland Raiders, that has identity. You're the bad boy team. You're the team of gangsta rap. You move to Las Vegas, you become the team of Steve and Edie. I don't think that's healthy. Nor is it healthy moving from a top 5 market to the number 40 market and disenfranchising half the fans in that top 5 market. So these are things that the NFL, you said, I said I was going to get to later on what I would do to try to improve the NFL. First of all, I'd stop franchise relocation. I don't know if you can feasibly move the Chargers back to San Diego. In fact, as I say, I do see why you'd want a team in London eventually, if you can work out the logistics. I also see why you want to keep the teams at 32. It's such a perfect number with 4-team divisions and blah, blah, blah. You know, just like at one time, it really was perfect years ago when you had 16 teams. Now, more people, yes, you did have to expand. But if you see what the schedule was like back in 16-team baseball, where everybody played each other, 11 on the road, 11 at home, 154 games, when, you know, you did have Eastern teams when, say, the Braves and Phillies, I'm talking Boston now, would play each other, then, yeah, Brooklyn and New York would play each other. You would know that the schedule worked out absolutely perfectly. There was even a circumstance that when the National League teams went to the Western cities, like, say, St. Louis and Chicago, then the Western teams of the American League, say, Detroit and Chicago, would be playing against Eastern teams like, say, the Red Sox and the Yankees. So, I mean, it just worked out perfectly back in the day. Well, you've got similar things now, which is why you don't maybe want to have expansion teams and go to 34 in the NFL. 32 is just this wonderful number for scheduling, for, competition and everything. I get that. And I also get where I look at the Chargers and I say, well, if you were going to move a team to London, that would probably be the one that I would do, because you'd still be having large market, and just nobody cares about the Chargers in Los Angeles, and nobody is going to care about the Chargers in Los Angeles. They're always going to be a second-string team. They're going to be a secondary tenant in the new Rams Stadium. I think that's the eventual, plan. But, the value of the franchise would probably be when it's an international franchise, be worth all kinds of pounds. Let's put it that way. So I understand all of that. But if I was in the commissioner's office, I would put a halt on franchise relocation. You're not going to, where are you going to move to right now? Is it all that pressing that, we disrupt a growing fan base, something good in Jacksonville, so that San Antonio can have a team? I don't see that. Is it so important that, Buffalo lose their team so you can have it in more of a population center in Toronto? I just don't see where that's absolutely necessary. I see where it has bad repercussions for the fans that are scorned, as we're seeing right now contemporarily. The other thing that I would do is try to make the league as apolitical as possible. Now, we can go coulda, woulda, shoulda on the anthem. That's become a huge thing. One of the things I'd do, if I was in there, is I would encourage playing, shall we say, American songs instead of just the national anthem, allowing teams to decide what to do. And I was thinking of songs that could be played, that would make people proud to be Americans if played instead of the national anthem, and we're all at attention and all that. And some teams will want to continue to play the national anthem, the Star Spangled Banner. I would not have the Baltimore Ravens change from the Star Spangled Banner. Francis Scott Key, it's a Maryland song. All the Baltimore fans just love to chant on, "Oh, say does that star." I wouldn't change that. But let me just ask you this. If you played America the Beautiful and you were kneeling, you'd be kneeling for scenery. Think about that. Who's kneeling for that? If you would go to a more contemporary song, Livin' in America by James Brown. Okay, it's a pop song, maybe it doesn't carry the weight of, God Bless America or the Star Spangled Banner. I get that. But who's kneeling for James Brown? You're still celebrating the country and you're still being, celebratory. Isn't this patriotism in another way? What if the Steelers would play something like In America by Charlie Daniels with the great line, just lay your hands on a Steeler fan? Something like that. What if Flyers became well known for God Bless America at one point? What if the Eagles picked up on that? And I think that that would be the way that you could still have Americanism, but, you know, who's kneeling for these songs? I think that that would, in essence, ease out the kneeling movement and also establish, you know, signatures for the franchises. Like I said, I mean, God Bless America for the Flyers, that was something of a signature. That was a bit of identity for the Broad Street Bullies back in the 70s. They still have, you know, this just, they keep the record of whenever they play it. I think they still play it whenever they want to, you know, pull out a big victory or something. It's still used time to time there. It's Flyers branding, marketing, tradition. It's not anything against the country. Who in the NHL would ever consider kneeling on a skate when the Chicago Blackhawks are playing the anthem, and as tradition there, everybody cheers during the anthem? Who's going to do that? I mean, you got to be the biggest spoil sport in the world. Well, these are ways that you can actually become apolitical and actually celebrate the country. And in time, then, the kneeling movement that has divided so many fades away. You know, I think that that's the way. They've been talking about trying to establish a rule like the NBA has, that you must stand for the anthem. And admittedly, David Stern 20 years ago, when Mohamed Abdul-Rauf started to kneeling, he nipped that right in the bud. And by the way, when you consider where the NBA franchises are, I mean, a quarter of them are in one-horse towns. And by that I mean towns in which the NBA franchise is the only game in town, the only major pro sports franchise. You're not winning a lot of fans if you become the anti-patriotic sport in Oklahoma City. If that's your branding there, you're not winning too many battles. You know, sorry, no, you're not. All the retirees in Orlando, you're not, you know, you're not helping your cause out there if that's the way that you decide to brand yourself. All the, you know, red state Texas, you do that in San Antonio, forget about it. And Stern knew that. And so he put an end to it right away. NFL hemmed and hawed, now they have a problem. I'm just saying that that's the way that I would do it to become less and less political. And, you know, if you start to try to appease the union and say you're going to donate $100 million to social justice programs, you're going to be dividing people who don't agree with what social justice warriors stand for as much as you're going to be appeasing people who are upset about the anthem kneelers. It's working even worse. So the idea here is, NFL, you've got to get apolitical. And once that happens, I think then you know, it's easier said than done. But the NFL right now is being attacked by both sides. And the only way I think they can get out of it is, to be apolitical. Anyway, that's where I'm at. I told you that I was going to be telling you about the balls. That's right. I said that I was going to be talking about that on this edition of Tri-City Sports Now. And I think that's exactly what I'm going to do in the next segment. They're packing them in Lithuania. But do we really care? And what does UCLA think about this? What do the Lakers think of the balls? I've got stories to tell you all about it when we come back on Tri-City Sports Now.